There are two teams in the Premier League right now that I just don't think are getting enough recognition, and they're not getting the plaudits that they really deserve. And they've had very good seasons. They find themselves sat on 55 points, both tied, both fighting for the European places this season. It's Brighton and Brentford. And I think, first of all, Brentford, for me, have probably had the better season and the more surprising season. When you think about it, when Ivan Toney was leaving, a lot of people said, I worry about Brentford. Potentially, without those goals, they could struggle. Well, they haven't at all. I don't think they've looked back. They've arguably looked even better. They've had Wissa get 18 Premier League goals. Brian Mbeumo has got 18 goals. Kevin Schade on 11. In terms of assists, Mikhail Damsgaard's on 10 and Mbeumo on 7. They've had some real top performers this season in terms of the Premier League numbers and statistics, and just purely the football that they play. They're willing to adapt to make sure they win games. I don't think Thomas Frank's getting the recognition he deserves. I know we've spoken about him as being a potential candidate for some of the bigger jobs, but realistically, when you look at the job he's doing and the finances at Brentford, he could really excel at a top side, not just be a good manager. He could go on to another level. And I look at even the goalkeeper, Flecken's come in and had a real strong season. And for me, arguably one of the contenders for the goalkeeper of the season. I think he's been that good. And I've been really impressed with Brentford. And the fact that they're putting together results going into the end of the season. They're 4 wins in a row at the moment. They've got a fantastic chance of playing one of the European competitions next season. I mean, it's all to be seen how that'll go over the last couple of game weeks of the season. And they're level with Brighton, another team for me who, at first, under Fabian Hertzler, I wasn't so sure. I didn't know how they would do. I know they spent a lot of money in the summer, arguably the most of any Premier League team. They bought in some big names for their level, and I think ultimately we all probably expected them to have a maybe a slightly better season than what they did. But for such a young manager, who I think got taught a couple of lessons early on, and he had a real issue when they got beat a few weeks ago by Nottingham Forest in a bit of an embarrassment. They fell right off it. They've kind of kicked back into gear in recent weeks, and they're finding themselves pushing on towards Europa League or Conference League places as well, depending on how it all ends up at the end of the season. But they're another team who have had a good season. Danny Welbeck at 34 has had his best Premier League goal scoring season ever. And I just think their ability to rotate their team with so many different players and consistently find gems is always spoken about. But this is like the 3rd or 4th time now they've had to regenerate a couple of their players, leaving and you know, find players to come in and do similar jobs. They've done fantastically well again. And to potentially go and get themselves Europe, it's a massive step forward for the club. And I just don't think enough is being said about Hertzler. As a young manager, he's done massive things and he's learned so quickly. And for me, when I think about managers now, so many of them are sat in such a systematic mindset that they don't want to do anything different. He is leading the pack for changing things up and switching up how he wants his team to play. Sometimes he's got his strikers playing towards the midfield. Sometimes he's got his midfielders playing incredibly high. He doesn't mind if his team play in different styles to win a game of football. He is a very intelligent guy. And you know what? I think naive at the beginning at just how strong the Premier League was, but I think he's learnt his lesson. And I think that's one of the biggest things I can say in terms of praise for a manager, is that if they're able to learn from their mistakes and do it quickly and the team benefit because of that and start getting better results, I think that puts them in a category, you know, above average. Maybe not good. Maybe you've got to go and win something or do something really of note. But when you can learn that quickly, I think it does start to separate you from the rest. And I think Brighton and Brentford have had fantastic seasons and they're kind of going under the radar. But I was looking through at my sort of Premier League teams and who I thought might potentially break in to my team of the season. And you know what? There's a number of players in those sides that have had very, very good seasons. Very good seasons. I think Brentford are probably edging it. And for me, the numbers that some of those Brentford players have put up are outstanding and way better than I ever thought. But maybe a little bit more needs to be said just on how good these two teams have been this season for their finances and what they're able to achieve financially in terms of player power and purchasing power and squad building, it shouldn't be anywhere near some of the other teams. And some of the other teams that are miles above that have done so poorly. And we'll move on to them because I think Manchester United and Tottenham have been so poor. I've been so underwhelmed by these two teams this season. I think they've both regressed probably 20 points, if not more, by the time the season finishes on last season. Manchester United were 4 points off of the Champions League places when Amorim come in. They find themselves in 16th in the Premier League, and they have been so far off it. It's unbelievable. And this is Manchester United. And when we talk about wages and purchasing power, they can rival anyone in the league, and they are nowhere near the likes of Premier League minnows, if you like, Brentford and Brighton. And I just think it's been such a mess. But I don't think enough is being said about how bad Amorim has been. And for me, yes, okay, fair enough. You've got Manchester United to a European final. And I understand that you have to put a lot of focus in to get there. And they have had injury issues, but he has really struggled to get to grips with the Premier League. And his system, I think it's clear to say, has not worked. And I just feel like to drop that many points as a Manchester United manager and be that far away and arguably have the worst Manchester United season they've ever had, it does a huge amount of damage to his reputation as a manager. And if I was at Manchester United and I was making some big decisions, I'd be concerned next season just about how, even if he wins the Europa League and they get Champions League football, how much money do I spend on this manager and back him over the summer? Because I haven't seen enough, and arguably he's done a lot worse than what Ten Hag was doing, and Ten Hag was miles off of what Manchester United fans believed was their standard. Then we look at their relegation rivals, albeit they are both safe now, Spurs. All right, I should maybe say the Europa League finalist rivals, which is absolutely bonkers to me. And I think it does show the strength of the Premier League that these two teams are in a Europa League final, but they're literally the two teams above the drop in the Premier League. It shows that there's quality, but I don't think it's excusable for these managers to come out and say, no, all our eggs are focused on in this one basket on the Europa League final and getting Champions League. That's the golden carrot. That's what we want. I don't think it's good enough. I know Ange said he focused on the League Cup as well, but Tottenham have also regressed over 20 points. They find themselves currently on 38, Manchester United on 39, as I said. That's not good enough. That is such a massive drop-off for a team that revenue-wise generate the most in the Prem, or they're right up there. They got the best stadium probably in the Premier League right now. They have a huge amount of income coming into that club. As a business, they're probably one of the best run in the league. We've heard many financial experts talk about just how well Spurs are ran. But what's happening on the pitch, for me, is just inexcusable. And there's talks, isn't there, that even if Ange wins the Europa League and gets some Champions League football, he may continue. I think that's absolutely ludicrous to even suggest that should be a possibility. I think you can't find excuses for Premier League managers in this day and age when the talent pool is, it's pretty good and teams chop and change so often. To drop that many points, and the Premier League is so competitive, you can't take the risk. These clubs are way too big to be in this position in the Premier League. I don't care how you dress it up. And at the end of the day, for finishing this low, they've both lost millions. And in terms of the league and what the punishment is if they don't get Champions League football, I mean, wow. It is incredible that two teams in the Big Six could find themselves finishing 16th and 17th. And if it wasn't for the championship teams being so far off of the level of what is required to stay in the Premier League right now, because even then, the gap from like Ipswich and the others is massive to Tottenham and Manchester United. It's absolutely crazy. They could have been in a relegation battle, and two of the Big Six could have potentially found themselves going down. I don't know whether or not if the safety net hadn't have been there and they were in a relegation battle, they might have found the results. But quite honestly, they've been so bad, I'm not sure that they would have. And for the money that those two teams have spent, it's just unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. But look, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to try and pick my team of the season. We'll get the video out soon enough. It's been a weird Premier League season for me, but I kind of thought that I'd go 2 teams that I think have kind of surprised everyone and 2 teams that have surprised everyone in the complete and utter wrong way. Let me know your thoughts about any other teams that I should mention who have had sort of fantastic seasons, or they've not been spoken about enough, or they've had really bad seasons, because I know there's a couple of honourable mentions there for either way. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and I'll catch you in the next one.